Most people don't think they have the necessary skills to start a business, and that's because we are flooded with the top 1% of creators, and we're constantly asking ourselves, how can I compete with this? But what if I told you there are 4 secrets that every successful person knows, and if you understand these, you're going to be way ahead of your competition. First, nobody started out as an expert. We're all just figuring this out as we go. Second, the most successful people have spent their entire lives stacking skill after skill, and all of those things collide in order to create their business model. Secret number 3, every single person has shiny object syndrome. We will come back to that one in just a second. In the last secret, you don't have to be the best of the best to be successful. You just have to get a little creative. So let's start with shiny object syndrome. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're doom scrolling through YouTube or Instagram or TikTok and you come across something that you immediately have to try. After you get started, you obsess over it day in, day out. You can't stop, even if you wanted to. And what goes along with that is you spend way too much money in a short period of time. And after a few weeks or months or years, you just lose interest in the thing. And then every piece of equipment you bought collects dust in your attic, and you only see it when it's in the way of your Christmas decorations. You start something new, and then the cycle repeats. We live in a world that encourages dopamine addiction and endless distractions. And I know that sounds bad. Usually it is. But what if I told you there's a way to turn that into your superpower and use it for good? And by good, I mean starting a business, quitting your 9-to-5 job, and getting paid to do something you love. And back to the whole expert thing, you might not think you're an expert, but one story will prove you wrong. In 1989, economists Martin Weber, Colin Camerer, and George Lowenstein published a phenomenon known as the curse of knowledge. If you haven't heard of this before, the short version is we assume others know just as much about a topic as us. In fact, because social media only shows us someone else's highlight reels, I would argue that most of us think that everybody else is just way smarter than us. But the truth is, you might not be the best app developer in the world. You might not be the best cook. You might not be the best writer. But if you've been practicing something for any period of time, you're at least 20% better than the beginner. And that 20% is all you need to start your business. To you, that knowledge and those skills that you've gathered might seem like second nature, but to an absolute beginner, you might as well be Einstein writing the theory of relativity on a chalkboard. And my argument for why everybody should find a way to monetize their creativity in some way, unfortunately, now that AI is taking over the world, no one can afford to be a specialist. Perfect example. One of my friends is probably the most qualified Google SEO specialist in the Southeast. Years ago, when he and I first started working together, he raised my Google views by 200%, got me to that #1 spot, and I saw significant growth in my business. And that was all in a month of working together. But because he knows that AI is eventually going to replace all SEO specialists, he's completely pivoted. He's become a generalist. He's combined his knowledge of SEO, writing, web design, and a couple other things. And he's starting to build a new business that's going to be irreplaceable, and it's going to change the way small businesses are discovered. This is the same reason Apple dominates the market. They don't do any one thing perfectly, but they take all of these different ideas that other people have had, they combine them, they make them work well enough, and that's how they create such a seamless experience. All that to say, how do you get started with this process? Well, I've got 5 simple steps for you. If you follow these, you're gonna be way ahead. First, write down every interest you've ever had. And then I want you to pick 3 of those, the ones that get you the most excited, the topics you could talk about forever. My 3 would be creativity, human development, and digital business. Then I want you to think about every single question a beginner might have, and you probably already know all of those questions because you had them when you first got started. So you already know the solution. That's your advantage. For step 2, you need to understand what I mean by define your brand. I'm not talking about building out your landing page, building your website, or making a logo, nothing like that. I'm talking about figuring out what you want to be known for and going all in on that. Because the most successful creators all have one thing in common. They own a word or a phrase. Anytime you think of it, you think of them. When you think of Justin Welsh, you probably think of the word solopreneur. For Casey Neistat, the word would definitely be vlogging. And when I see Kieran Drew on X, I think about high impact writing. Once you have that word or that phrase that you want to go after, time to take step 3. And step 3 is start creating content around that thing. And I know that sounds broad. You've heard it a million times, but that's only because it's true. And for people that have never thought about making content before, whether it be writing or video, I know it's going to sound terrifying, but in the digital world we live in, if you want to turn your passion into a business, you don't have a choice. And here's one important tip. People don't want generic how-to content anymore. They have AI for that. If there's one thing you need to keep in mind, one thing that will win over an audience, authenticity. And when I say be authentic, I don't mean try to make perfect content. try to do the same thing as everybody else. I mean, figure out a way to frame the thing that you're going after, make it your own, and present it in a way that sounds like you. If you can't give people that, then your genius business plan is never going to be anything more than that piece of paper that we just filled out on your desk. And if you don't know where to get started, there is one type of content that literally anybody can do. And when I mean anybody, I mean as soon as you finish this video, you could open up your phone, make a piece of content in less than 30 seconds, and start sharing right away. That particular type of content is writing. And I mean, you could just get started. You could open up X, you could open up LinkedIn, Threads, Medium, Substack, any particular platform you want. You could go on there, have something up in 30 seconds. Then you've got your first piece of content, which from making content off and on for about 20 years, I can tell you the first time you do it is going to be the hardest. But once you get it out of the way, you can just improve from there, and it becomes easier and easier every time you upload. Before we move on to step 4, which is figuring out what kind of content you should make, there's a quote from one of my favorite authors. His name's Joey Cofone. Quality over quantity, but quantity begets quality. What that means is you're not going to be good when you start. Unfortunately, nobody started out great. Like even me, I've been making YouTube videos off and on for probably the last 15 years. And I'm definitely not reading these lines as well as I could. I'm probably looking everywhere. I'm not looking at YouFindPeople, but that's okay. The point is get started. The point is making content. The point is trying to provide as much value with the knowledge that you've gained. And in terms of my personal story, when I say I've been making content for 20 years, in middle school, I started out with anime fan fiction before I even know what fan fiction was. After that, I tried making Call of Duty commentary videos. You guys definitely remember those if you were on YouTube between like 2007 and 2012. Then it was video game reviews. Then it was movie reviews. Then I had my own blog for a gaming website. We can count live streaming. We can count making content that's similar to what I'm doing now. Anyways, if you can take anything from that, I am still 20 years later figuring out exactly how I want to frame my content. I'm figuring out all of the topics that I want to discuss, and I'm kind of just going from there. You have the ability to experiment. You have the ability to try new things. And honestly, nobody is going to watch or read the first 20 or 30 posts that you put up. So take out your phone, write something, upload it, do it again tomorrow, keep going. So, all right, now let's talk about what type of content you should be making in the first place. You can write about whatever you want, but there is one way to frame your stuff that gets the most clicks, and that's educational content. And to give you a loose framework of how to get started, I have 3 rules for you when it comes to making written content. Rule 1, your content should always be centered around a pain point. And rule 2, this goes back to what we were saying earlier, always be authentic. I think about the threat that AI poses all the time, especially to writers. The advantage that you have over AI is that it will never be able to tell your personal story with your personal experience. And with stories in mind, they are the best way that you can convey any message. And something that Donald Miller preaches all the time, you are not the hero of the story that you're writing, and if you frame yourself as such, you're going to lose your reader's attention pretty quickly. So instead, the correct way to do it, frame your reader as the hero, position yourself as a guide. Not only does this allow you to connect with your reader a little bit more, but it also, A, sets you up as the guide, B, allows you to be authentic, C, helps you confirm that you have authority to speak on the topic. And then writing rule number 3, in order to teach, you have to remain a student. We live in a world where we spend 90% of our day consuming some type of content. So my advice to you, stop consuming content as just background noise or mindless entertainment, and instead start consuming content that's related to what you yourself want to make. Take some ideas, make them your own, and put those out into the world. I think in the beginning, you should be more worried about figuring out how to enjoy the process, but eventually, in order to keep doing this, you have to figure out how to monetize. And there's a lot of ways to do that. For instance, there's sponsorships, there's affiliate marketing, you can sell your time or your services. But in my opinion, creating a product, especially a digital product, is the best way to go about it because you're creating a form of passive income. Whether that be something like a template or an ebook or a course, once you have it designed and uploaded to your website, the key is that you just mention it to your audience once in a while. And hopefully, if you're doing this right and you've grown your audience enough, you'll have a couple people that migrate over to your website, make a purchase, and you didn't have to handle any part of that sale. I'll be making plenty of content on specifically how to monetize different parts of your creativity. But for now, I recommend you watch this video by Struthless. He's one of my favorite YouTubers. He's a master at animation, and he's an artist that turned that passion into a force to be reckoned with in Australia. And if you want to get content like this in your email inbox every single week, go to the first link in the description, join my newsletter. I would really appreciate it. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video.